Last time on FableSMP, Ray went over to Wolf and Centros to talk out some recent feelings. The feelings that had him kind of fleeing from Wolf at the end of them finding the crashed ship and Akashic records in the end. And the growing feelings about anger and being left out of the loop. So they actually had a really good conversation. They were able to talk things out. Ray heard some things that he needed to hear, and they got some good improvements. Wolf was not wearing his mask the entire time, and they actually hugged. We had really pretty art, and together they decided to go over to Ulysses' house, as all three of them are on various scales of not hating their Telkin community member. So they went and cleaned up his house, cleaned up all of the overgrowth, cleaned up the windows that were broken, and cleared out the cobwebs. And did have some good laughs and fun moments with it. Something that did come up, though, is that Oshi has gone missing. She found a book that had some sort of travel spell, and Oshi, being Oshi, tried it out. And Wolf was there and watched as Oshi disappeared in a flash of lightning and is yet to return. So they are keeping an eye out for Oshi, and Ray and Wolf and them are making sure to check in on Oscar. Last time on FableSMP, Ray was watching after Oscar when Mambu came up, looking for Oshi, which, as we know, is not exactly around right now. Mambu and Ray got to have a good conversation, got to have a good little talk. Ray asking about things with the resets, and both of them getting to compare notes that they have with Mambu's diaries, with the things Ray has learned, and both of them got to help each other on Oshi's stream. We sure found out what the travel spell did, as not Oshi has arrived to FableSMP. Dio Oshi has arrived, no longer a phantom origin, but she looks quite different than the Oshi that Wolf expected. He was immediately had his hackles raised when she appeared at the summoning circle. She slipped away from him, got her ghosts to help find Fable Oshi's home, where Ray was babysitting Oscar, which meant that Ray immediately was nervous when he could tell by her aura and her appearance this was not his friend. He got Centros to come help, and they have moved Oscar away from Ven and Fable Oshi's house because they are not leaving the baby with the strange, not Oshi, walking around. Last time on FableSMP, they had a visit from Addie. While the castle crew, Centros, Wolf, and Ray, were talking to Ven and Easton about this not Oshi, Addie came up and asked them about the lantern posts that they have set up all around town center, asking if they knew what the teal stuff was, the skulk that they use. And Addie explained that this skulk is all over their home. Ray offered for them to come and take a look. And they did. They all rode their horses out together to a surprisingly deep down cave. When they got there, there was a hidden piston door, bubble elevator down. They went down and found a city in the earth. A massive city of deep slate, covered in skulk, abandoned and in decay. And they went and looked around, found that this city was once called the Masonry. People there called themselves the Masons. They were refugees from the War of the Realms, mortals from more than just the overworld that had come and hidden away from the gods to try and survive. It's quite an interesting discovery. At the end of the day, Ray ended up back at the library, his library, the Evermond Library, and got a little ally that they found wandering about back to the library with him. And when the auras reminded him that it might not be safe to leave them alone, he decided to spend the night up in the library on the couch to make sure that they weren't there alone with the stranger that is wandering around right now. Last time on FableSMP, Ray woke up and was immediately found and interrupted by Haley. She had showed up right at the library, saying it was time to go help her work on a new house. So he did. Helped find the spot, clear out an area, start laying down some walls, some groundwork, and all the while getting to talk to Haley. Which was a time, as it always seems to be with her. He found that she knows nothing about what's going on with Oshi right now, but much to his own little frustrations, she wasn't all that willing to tell him a lot of things, even though she's read a lot in her time in Purgatory. There wasn't a whole lot that she was willing to share. Very insistent that things are happening as they should, that telling people could cause unexpected changes that could lead to worse outcomes, so she's hesitant to give any answers. And with it came I guess a bit of an internal dilemma with Ray, in the feeling that they all have no control over their destinies, that everything is pre-written and that everything has been happening and they can't do anything about it, and that being a source of frustration for him. But in the end, he was able to kind of brighten up, seeing that there are things that have changed, that Haley showing up was not supposed to happen, that there are things that are unwritten, there are things that they are doing. And in the words of the Masons that they found the time before, by our design, feeling quite significant to him right now. Last time on FableSMP, on Ray's perspective, the last time we saw him was the date with his partners. The time out at the campsite and getting to enjoy each other's company, but there's been more interactions with Geist. Finding her snooping around Invised in their house really set Ray on edge. Last time on FableSMP, we had a bit of a bonus fun episode where Caspian had recently found a Akashic Records library, and he had found some interesting information in it that led to Caspian making a little gift. Because in that library was a copy of Notes number 1 again. This time with the top part of the note on the cover actually intact. That said it was for Ray's 7th birthday on June 26th. So we got a birthday for Ray and an age confirmation on when he wrote that book. So that gave Ray, Isla, and Sherbert 7 years together, at least. And Caspian used it to make a little build, gather a bunch of little messages from their friends. And I will admit, some of those messages were out of character and made me absolutely cry. It was very good all around. But also prevalent to today will be the time before, when Ray had a confrontation with Geist. She tried to take Oscar, and it ended up in a visitor from a different universe. And there was a lot of information shared there. And there's been quite a few things going on. Last time on FableSMP, Ray got to go talk to Sherbert about the multiverse. All the things he learned from the dimensional traveler Jerry that he was visited. All the things he learned from the different Oshis. And trying to figure out Quixis's place in all this, and if it connects to the resets, with the unfortunate, frustrating moment that maybe it doesn't, and not quite knowing what to do with that information. Not on my stream, but on a few others, there was a bit more of a fun moment where Ray was caught working in the library while the book club rolled up. Mambu, Wolf, and Arsana came over, and Ray got to talk to them about a lot of things that have been happening. Catching Arsana up on also what happened with Geist and Oshis, and some of the books that have been around, some of the things he's been finding, and got to go get a little look at Starbucks and the coffee within, and man sure drank 14 of them and was a little highly caffeinated until he had quite the hard caffeine crash as Wolf lured him to fall asleep. Last time on FableSMP, Ray had quite the dream where he was starting to have that reoccurring one of the night his mother went missing, only for it to end and him to wake up not at home, but in purgatory to talk to Fable, talking about working on the portal, trying to get Fable back, and Fable helped with an interesting offer that dreams have the ability to process memories that maybe the waking mind isn't quite ready for. In the same way that Fable was able to show some of his own memories to Ray and Sherbert when they first saw him there together, Ray was able to show Fable that night as well, to be able to see more of it. Not all of it, he still doesn't remember the words said, but could see the person standing there was Endirian that walked in. Definitely freaked him out though, and instead of getting to go talk to Fable again afterwards, he woke up and rushed to go work on the portal when a familiar face walked up as Illyrion. Illyrion came up, Ray and Luce got to talk. Illyrion having changed a bit. Walking now, less powerful, speaking English. Even his markings have faded to gray instead of blue. It was a time. A bit bittersweet of good to see him, but Ray severely struggling with the realization that some people have given up on trying to find the answer to the resets, and how much that makes him feel like people have given up on him, that he has failed people because of that. So that is where he left off. Last time on FableSMP was a pretty fun one. Ray, very tired from having stayed up trying to puzzle everything out, went and stole some coffee. Stole more coffee, got very caffeinated, and invented chiseled bookshelves. We got the 120 update on the server, so that stream was a lot of fun hanging out with people and working on redoing the library. So the Everman library has now been refurbished with all the new books, and it was a good time overall. Maybe helped Ray get some things done. Last time on FableSMP, Ray and Arasana went on a bit of an adventure where Arasana came to Ray asking for help on finding more of the pillager locations, specifically a mansion, which Ray was able to remember how Chaos had brought him to one before. And they went over, fought through a mansion, and freed 8 allies from the dungeon and the vexing lab within, finding several totems, uncharged totems, and information about that, including, by the looks of it, a note that in a past reset, Arasana was likely subjugated to the vexing process herself. And it was a lot. And Arasana and Ray sat outside with the allies they had recovered in the shadow of a burning mansion, when Arasana mentioned that soon all would be okay, or she would be able to take them home to the Aether. And Ray had to ask. Arasana believed that the portal frame he had made would take her and her siblings home, and he had to tell them that the Aether had been severed quite completely when they had lit it last time. It led to a fight An argument where both sides were correct. Arasana upset and grieving, and maybe a bit of misplaced anger, but rightfully valid in her feelings. Ray upset, trying to do his best and knowing he doesn't have all the answers for everyone, and him struggling with that. Arasana at least asked him to try and think through what might happen to her and her family if he lights it again. And he brought those feelings home, where Caspian comforted him for a while, even showing him the new archery range he had made. They spent some time together. Last time on FableSMP, last time we were with Ray, there was a trip out to the Mysons. Quite an interesting one, actually, where going back to the Masonry, the city, the ancient city, they found a bit more. Well, this was a society full of redstone engineers, so there are probably lots of hidden tricks, treats, and places in the city. They found the workspace lab, perhaps, of Adara, one of the leaders of the Mysons, where she had come up with a way to hide codes along the routes to outposts and places, introducing the brush and the archaeology concepts of the 120 update to the FableSMP. With it came a code based on the stars. Now, lists of numbers were given with code names of constellations and things telling us how to break them up, and then red and blue listed to give us positive and negative based on the red-blue shift phenomenon of stars. So Ray and Wolf were able to find themselves all the way to one of the outposts, where they found confirmation that the Mysons were led by Wolf's sister Nevaeh. And not only that, but at some point the survivors of whatever attacked Morningstar Kingdom had joined them, including that Raymond Morningstar, Ray's grandfather, had survived the attack, but may not have lived long enough to see his people to safety. Recently, on other streams, Ray has been there to help support Caspian when he returned from a adventure with Arasana, which had started as a delivery for Ray's apology letter. But Caspian told Ray about the village that they had come upon that had part of place that he used to go and wait for Mambu, and what appears to be something from Ven's fiance. Last time on FableSMP, Ray took a visit to the village that Caspian and Arasana had been to, and found something quite strange there, where the energy auras were glitching, flickering, fighting, trying to figure out what they actually wanted to be on the seam line of a gold and green aura, which Ray has theorized is almost like the world, what is left of it without Mambu, and Quixis or whatever is bringing things through the resets were fighting over putting a village in a spot. He did find there, though, that the raid of pillagers that Caspian and Arasana had scuffled with likely killed everyone in the village, as it was empty, partially burned, and there was nothing there. Afterwards, he flew home, found, to his surprise, Ulysses. And they had a conversation, both of them apologizing, and Ulysses actually being very upfront and honest about where he's been with Connor the dog. And both of them kind of coming to an agreement that they want answers and want to help work with each other to get there. So, the issue was when Ulysses asked about a building nearby, as he was working on a project but noticed that there was something up in one of the caves. He brought Ray up, as Ray didn't really think through, like, what might be up there. Ulysses led him right to the glitched in cell that he used to sleep in. Got Ray a little freaked out, and he went on a flight to try and clear his mind, and of just taking off and going until he ran into a cold biome, felt comforted, and kind of watched a little fox play around as he tried to calm down. Last time on FableSMP, Ray was off, still having flown to go calm his mind. Ended up sketching the little Arctic foxes playing around him. Headed home and was asked by Arasana if he could talk. And they did, and it was good. She apologized, and so did he, about their fight. And then Ray got to sit down and talk to Arasana about everything that happened, and try and actually explain things and tell her what he knew. And overall, it went really well. Though afterwards, things got a bit different, as it pushed Ray to start looking more into a way to actually light the portal. He realized that he's been putting off looking into the skulk catalysts, which is his leading theory that pieces of Perix residing within them could be gathered and used as a way to light the portal. But he needed to figure out first what the catalysts are, what they do. And using the fact that they were called a catalyst, he assumed that meant that they would be how skulk spreads and grows. So he started testing what could make it grow, and got his answer. Not quite in the way he expected. When testing for darkness, like what mushrooms and other fungi need, it allowed a mob to spawn. As a skeleton came out from the darkness, Ray killed it and saw the aura around it condense and tighten into an XP orb. And the XP orbs got absorbed into the catalyst and spread the skulk. So the skulk spreads basically from death. Last time on FableSMP, Ray had just seen the skulk spread, was very spooked, and he went over to Sherbert, seeking, a good distraction, a good comfort, a good way to try and calm down after that. And they got to talk. They did some sciencey things where he checked out the DER at Sherbert's house, learned about some of the weird things that have shown up lately, and finally got to have their little brother sleepover. Some good little times were had. Some of trying to teach Sherbet how to braid hair because Sherbet realized that they didn't know. And so they gave their best shot at braiding Ray's hair. And Ray watched as Sherbet fell asleep and saw their aura concentrate around their eyes and shift colors, and the bleeding of their eye getting worse throughout the night. And when Sherbet woke up, the walls changed to all quartz. Sherbet was in pain and yelling, and Ray rushed over to help, and they realized they had definitely been there before, getting some of the memories of the first time it happened, of a very young Ray trying to help their older brother to the best of a younger brother can. It was interesting. Ray and Sherbet got to talk about what had happened from Sherbet's perspective, what had happened from Ray's, lining up some new pieces together, and eventually went to go see the pond to see the damage that Quixis has been causing there. But still, the two decided to end it well and go have a real sleepover where they got to actually go sleep. Last time on FableSMP, Ray had quite a little surprise as Jamie showed up and told him that someone was waiting for him in the lab. To his surprise, it was a fox. The same fox that he had been spending some time with and sketching when he went and took a breather had come, followed him home. But not only that was a surprise, the egg that Jamie had was also a big one, which hatched into what we now call the sniffer. And Jamie and Ray worked together to make a little pen for their new friends, Polaris and Solaris. Got to discover this new creature and the new flowers that it dug up. It was very strange all around, but mostly really positive. Fortunately, not on Ray's perspective, but via Artful Renegade and Wolf's perspective, things took a pretty dark turn around Jamie's animals, as Wolf had a very intense nightmare and woke up to blood on his paws. The blood of many animals, including Martin, the cow. Wolf ran after Jamie found and yelled at him and fled to his observatory where Ray had already happened to be. So Ray did what Ray has done many times and comforted him, took him in, washed him up, and held him when he told him what happened. And he cried. And they tried to figure out what to do. So Ray told Wolf, in a few days, let me take you on a bit of a road trip, a field trip, a time to go find answers like they said they would. He just has a few things he has to do first because he doesn't want to just vanish and run off. And he promised Wolf he'd check on Jamie. Last time on FableSMP, Ray had a few things he wanted to get done before the road trip he promised Wolf. Number one being to not leave the Skulk lab still full of Skulk. So he was smart. He didn't do it alone. He got Easton's help, and while they were talking, actually got an idea. And he was trying to think of how to check something for a potential god soul or the portal. He started talking about how there are differences in auras for gods, that they're brighter, but a small amount of a bright thing is still a dim thing, so it's not a very good unit of measure. Easton gave the idea of looking somewhere else. Well, not looking being the key. So, before they kind of got sciencing though, Ray switched gears, knowing that he needed to prioritize going and checking on Jamie. Which they went over, finding Jamie Athena had brought an Impossible Whopper over to Solaris and Polaris's little pen. And Jamie, looking for a distraction, asked them if they could all. It was cool to go down and science in the lab with everyone, where Ray and Athena got very nerdy, while Jamie and Easton got to mess around and help out. But eventually led to the discovery of frequencies of auras. And that there's a frequency that can be tuned into that, if found, signifies the presence of a god soul. Which is quite a big leap, though it led to some unfortunate discoveries as well. That the catalysts are inert. There's no bit of Perix left within them, like Ray had hoped. And when everyone else went off to go do their own things, Ray might have spiraled a bit, in trying to think of the only other thing he knew that had enough god energy in it. Himself. But right now he knows that his friends need him. In particular, Wolf. Last time on FableSMP, Ray and Wolf took off on their road trip, going out to seek any signs of old, glitched in locations, maybe just old areas in general. Maybe hoping to see Morningstar Castle, maybe hoping to see other things. And they did find quite a bit. They found a library. And in that library had quite some interesting pieces. So, what did we see in there? We saw actually two books related to Wolf. One from Jerry, one from Perix. And we also found notes number 2, Ray's second childhood notebook, though it was just the destroyed remains, as Ray finally has had to come to terms with the idea that maybe his and Sherbert's relationship as children wasn't so positive. And he had a pretty hard time with that one. Wolf also is having a hard time figuring out why he would have allied with Perix, only for Ray to have a dream that night, which started out very confusing as it showed Vikesh and Wolf, but then made sense as it turned out it was Perix instead of Wolf, tricking the god of the stars into revealing their relationship with a mortal overworlder, which she then used as blackmail so that she could have Wolf serve as a spy for the End Court. Last time on FableSMP, we had part 2 of Ray and Wolf's road trip. They went flying around through a very interesting ice biome. Almost looked like a forest that was made of ice trees. Only to find in there a fallen tower. A fallen, ominous Bane tower. Going inside, Ray was uncomfortable, but pushed himself because he knows that especially things that have glitched in hold importance. They hold information. And within there, he found a few things. The first one being the shattered fragments of the bottle that Centros dropped on him with Endirian's essence inside of it. And it triggered a memory from Perix of her spying on Centros, disguised as an Enderman. They went further in, they kept going, and found an arrow. Afrin's will. And it triggered another memory of Perix spying on Sherbert, seeing them land on the End Island after killing Haley. And Ray got to hear the speech that Sherbert had, that no one was listening to except apparently disguised goddess. In it was also mixed in memories of Perix writing a book that she sent to Ominous Bane under the guise of being instructions from Endirian to bring Caspian back. Overall, not a very good time in that tower. So they kept going, finding a much better place after that. Instead, they found a cabin that Wolf recognized as the place that his adopted mother would bring him when he was having a hard time. And they found her recipe book. They found Wolf's little drawings. And in that place, they got to have a good time. Ray sketching out what he saw of Wolf's adopted dad, that Wolf could try and remember his face. And they baked the songbird bread recipe that Wolf remembered, having a good time there, before finally deciding that they could head home. So, now we're home. So, last time on FableSMP, Ray got to cleaning up kind of himself and the things that he had brought back from the road trip, which led him to Oshi's door, where he brought her the compass and the book that was written by Jerry as a good next clue. And she talked to him about her pen pals and talking to the other dimensional Oshis, which was a time and definitely led to some interesting thoughts on Ray's end about what if they tried the travel spell again? What would that look like? Last time on FableSMP, we had breakfast with Gay and Wolftross hanging out together. And Ray has been appearing on a few other streams, lending a hand, working on some creative little projects. He helped out Addie build a home actually close to spawn, and was around and helping out work on some new builds and upkeep of the house with Caspian. But breakfast overall was quite a good time, I think. I had silly times, and Ray having been trying to search for any memory of his mother. Got one, even if it wasn't what he expected it to be. He was looking for recipes, trying to remember what she used to cook like, and instead remembered how she learned. And therefore, how he learned. Watching Isla teach herself things from books, from trial and error, from failing and trying again. He got some of those back. And I think those meant more to him than a recipe would. It was nice. It's been nice lately. Last time on FableSMP, Ray tried to do some more research into what could light the portal. Starting with the shattered end essence that he found, it gave no frequencies of any sign of god auras. So that's a bust. Tried a little bit of himself, doing a blood draw and testing a sample of his own blood, which did contain it, but didn't exactly bode well. So he took a break. That break led to a dream. The first time we got to have Purgatory Scene live, where he talked to Fable, and Fable told him that, Ray, you are not going to be able to separate any of the god pieces that you have within yourself. They are part of you now. They are dug in. They maybe once were separate, but now you have grown over them. They have become part of you. You are not going to be able to separate them without hurting yourself. And Fable provided an alternative. Fable had been able to find where the Book of Saraza is located, using a very powerful book, the one that sits in the center of the Akashic Records, called As It Is. It is the book of the present. A very challenging book to read, as opening it, it is not words on a page, it is impressions in your mind. It is visions of everything happening all at once. You can feel all of the things, you get senses and sensations, and it can be very overwhelming. It is very challenging to read the book without losing yourself. Fable was able to locate at least a glimpse of where Saraza's book is located, and was able to show it to Ray and help him pull out of the book when it started to get overwhelming. And now Ray has an impression. He has a vision. He has seen where it is, but he doesn't know where that is. And he's struggling, because he also has on him, how is he gonna tell anyone? Especially Arasana. Last time on FableSMP, Ray has been trying to figure out what to do since getting the knowledge of sort of where the Book of Saraza is. He has an impression of it, a feeling, but not a location. So he's trying to figure that out, trying to figure out if it is better to show up to Arasana with the book in hand, or to try and get her to help him find it. And so last time he was trying to map out the other locations that he has found libraries, and glitched in locations, trying to see if there's a pattern, and just trying to cover a lot of ground to see, which led him to run into Sherbert, who he has not talked to since the road trip, where he found notes number 2, and where he found the ominous Bane Tower. And Sherbert tagged along, leading them to also see the ominous Bane Tower. And the brothers had a conversation out on the ice near the tower, with Ray revealing that he had seen through Perix's memories Sherbert after Haley's death, but Ray kept to himself some of the things he remembered about their childhood, not quite able to voice them after Sherbert looked so downtrodden. But he is back home now and trying to figure out what to do. What happened last time on FableSMP? So, Ray recently saw where Saraza was from the Book of the Present in Purgatory, which he was shown by Fable. He was able to then later, after trying and unsuccessfully searching for that location, was able to show it to Caspian using the powers of the mind from his Endirian shard. And Caspian could feel a pull towards the book. So they went to go tell Arasana and headed out. On Arasana and Caspian's streams earlier today, they went and found it. They found the book. Saraza spoke to them. Saraza has now asked them to use her soul to light the portal, as she doesn't want to exist as a book forever. And in some way, this helps her return home. And it was very hard for Arasana to hear that. At the end of that, Caspian and Ray headed home. Last time on FableSMP, Ray had just gotten home from a trip with Caspian and Arasana to go find Saraza. When he got up from a little bit of a nap after that, he was approached by Axe, asking him if they could go visit some of the temples that Ray had written down the coordinates for. And they did. They got Oshi and Ulysses to come along with, and they took a journey out to 3 temples, all of which looked very different than the ones that they had seen before. Instead of scientific experimentation or still partially intact religious temples, these temples were totally different. 2 of them were refugee camps, pieced together with anything they could find from shipwrecks and leftover supplies. The 3rd was a military training camp. And what they found there was hard to swallow, hard to handle. A lot of civilians, a lot of a look into the people who weren't the evil scientists doing experimentation. A lot of people that just were trying to live and unfortunately did not because of the actions of their fellow Telkin. They were being stalked and eventually attacked by Leviathan, finally showing up this reset. And when Leviathan broke into the temple, it trapped Ray and Oshi in a small room that was filling with water, while Ulysses and Axe had to try and fend off the angered god. Ray almost lost his life, and Axe was able to get Leviathan to leave, and they went home afterwards. Last time on FableSMP, Ray and Axe had just gotten home from their not so fun Telkin adventure, and they had basically crashed in bed, gotten thrown on their pajamas, crashed in bed, fallen asleep, and woke up later with Caspian. And the 3 of them all had nightmares. Caspian's nightmare was interesting as it wasn't Caspian's. And it appears there may be some side effects to Ray having used his mind powers for the first time, as Caspian had Ray's nightmare. But the three of them got up, went over to the new cherry blossom and amethyst ponds that Ray has been building when he's been stressed, sat together and talked about everything that had happened, how Ray had nearly died, Axe might have also been pretty close, and those feelings kind of hitting the three of them pretty hard. But they had each other to help process those emotions, to hear each other, to hold each other, and spend time together. I went up to Starbucks and got breakfast and coffee and just spent time together as a couple, being happy that all of them are okay and alive. And not on my stream, but on Art and Ghosties, the two of them went on a little trip where off to the end they went to go investigate a lead, wanting to maybe take something off of Ray's plate and go cover it themselves, seeing, well, if it's good, we'll tell Ray. If it's bad, maybe we don't. But they're quite excited, and I think they're excited to get something over here.